Hello and welcome to Biz Daily. I'm Jon Jordan. So today we're going to take a bit of a broader brush approach to the mobile games industry and actually look at the world economy really and see kind of what we can draw, what conclusions we can draw from that. So the big news at the moment is the Chinese, what's going on in the Chinese economy. So around stock exchanges over the last kind of week been heavily down. Basically because people are unsure what's happening in China. The Chinese economy, as we all know, has been kind of like the growth of the powerhouse of part of the world economy anyway. For the last kind of 10 years really, China has revolutionised itself. It's gone from an agrarian society, people being farmers basically, and it's gone to becoming a big production facility. Basically everything, most things, so consumer electronics, mobile phones, made in China. So there's been a big kind of transformation, a big kind of increase in the middle classes in China. And China has gone from a developing country into a developed country, and one that is obviously with over 1 billion people has a lot of power in the market. It's the second biggest economy in the world by most standards. But what we've seen in China over the last, and really in 2015, but certainly over the last couple of months, is a kind of a lack of confidence. So partly that's Chinese growth has for the last 10 years really been 7% a year in its economy, and that's kind of something that's it's actually really needed to just fuel its growth, to make sure all its people have jobs, and to kind of grow its middle class and make sure kind of to a degree everyone's happy. And it's been surprising that it's been growing at 7% a quarter for the last 10 years. That to a degree, a certain amount of suspicion has been kind of raised, because everyone knows 7% is the number it needs, and it's always hit 7%. So there's been a kind of growing suspicion of whether that number is actually a well kind of balanced, backed up number. And increasingly that's kind of been seen. There's been a few kind of bubbles in China. So there's been a property bubble, and then the stock exchange. There's the Shanghai Stock Exchange and the Shenzhen Stock Exchange, are the big ones in China. Also Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and they've grown over the last kind of year on year, up 100%, but over the last kind of 3 months down 50%. So there's a lot of volatility in there. Obviously, the big problem in China is lots of people have been borrowing money to buy shares because they thought shares were going to go up and up and up, and to a degree the Communist Party kind of encouraged this behaviour. Obviously now, when your portfolio is down 50% and you have to pay back the money you now don't have, people are getting a bit upset. And so what we're seeing on the Chinese stock exchanges is the Chinese government kind of being very active in telling people not to sell shares who have shares, telling people who previously, like pension funds who couldn't buy shares, to now buy shares, and in a sense all that's doing is actually making people more nervous about the kind of underlying kind of health of the stock exchange in China, and then you have Contagion and other stock exchanges around the world start to get a bit worried about what's going on in China. So much for the world economy. Things not very good if you own shares. But what does that mean for mobile game companies? So obviously, some mobile game companies are on stock exchanges, so they've been hit. Their shares have gone down like pretty much every other kind of company who have shares. But we can kind of draw some analogies. So the Chinese mobile games market has been growing amazingly really over the last couple of years. So 100% growth over the last 2 years, probably 50% growth in 2015. Very big numbers, much bigger than anywhere else in the world. And so what we've kind of seen is some companies, particularly kind of Western companies, have been looking to China as the place where they will find a lot of growth. And even over the last kind of 2014, we saw Japanese companies like DNA and Gree trying to set up offices in China and take advantage of that growth early on. Didn't really work out. Both those companies ended up really with bloody noses and had to shut down their operations. So what we found is China, I mean, we shouldn't really be surprised, China is a very different market to the rest of the world. So really the world in terms of mobile games boils down to the three big kind of markets. So there's Japan, which is all these about $5 billion market value in terms of annual sales. So Japan is a very Japanese market, very hard for people to break into that market who aren't Japanese. There's the West, North America and Europe, a bit more open, but still most of the big games there are from Western companies. And then there's China, again about a kind of $4 or $5 billion kind of market sized annually. And it's always potentially seen as a bit more open. So some Western games have done very well there, kind of Clash of Clans and Candy Crush Saga, the kind of to a degree the usual suspects. But some kind of companies I think kind of thought that just the growth of the Chinese market would make it easier for them to maybe get growth certainly easier than China or the Western markets, which are certainly not growing at anything like 50%, maybe it's growing at 10% or 15% a year. So kind of China was seen as this kind of good opportunity, and maybe what we'll see now is the Chinese market will actually mature quite quickly. So another interesting fact that has come out recently is that Chinese shipments of smartphones in China actually dropped or declined kind of quarter on quarter for the first time. So we're kind of seeing very quickly in terms of handset distribution that market is declining, is maturing, at least we'll say, and that could have a knock-on effect for certain companies. So an interesting one is Kabam. So Kabam are headquartered in the States, but most of their development is in China. This year was a big push into China for them, and to a degree they've been successful. Their Marvel game has been pretty successful. Marvel Conquest of Champions has been successful globally, but China has been a good part of that. And equally, even for kind of the Rovio, so a third of the Angry Bird 2 downloads have been in China. So it's still kind of a place where people can find growth, people can find audiences. But I wonder if kind of in future months, and certainly over the next year, people will stop talking so much about the kind of growth opportunities for China and start talking much more specifically about the nitty-gritty of how you kind of find success in China, because I think it's very easy when you see massive growth all the time to think it's very easy to capture some of that growth, and it's not. But certainly when markets become mature, you have to spend much more on marketing, be much more sophisticated in your messaging, much more careful about the games you're putting out there and how you kind of localize them and kind of culturalize them. And so I think we'll see much quicker than we perhaps thought a maturing of the Chinese mobile games market, and equally that will reflect itself in the Chinese mobile companies who to a degree have been able to raise quite a lot of money on their kind of activity because they were seen in a growth market, and now they'll probably find it a bit harder. They have to probably show some good figures, and we'll probably see a lot of consolidation in that market. To a degree it's already been happening, but I think we'll see a lot more of that, and potentially we'll see a lot more kind of Chinese companies. We're starting to see again Chinese companies who have raised money going out and spending and acquiring Western companies,